Well, it's good to hear about engineering because you get to hear an engineering speaker today. I'm filling in today for Scott Emily, who is traveling. Our speaker today and myself and Scott hang out a little bit together. And when I first wrote this, I had all kinds of things I was going to say about our speaker. And then I thought, well, let's not do that. Let's pick on Scott.
There you go.
Well, Scott,
Yeah.
he has enough faults. We don't really need to pile on him. We'll just let him work his way through. So instead, I'll introduce our speaker today, Matt Chalfant. Mark was raised in Great Bend, graduated with a degree in industrial engineering from K-State, and then worked for several years in California and Utah in the private sector in the manufacturing and industrial engineering fields, most notably in the aviation field. While there, he completed a master's degree in systems management from the University of Southern California. He was eventually recruited back to K-State to work at the KSU Advanced Manufacturing Institute, where for several years he consulted with private businesses on a number of engineering and manufacturing opportunities. Currently, Mark is the CEO of the Mid-American Manufacturing Technology Center, headquartered in Johnson County, where his successful implementation of the Innovation Engineering Management System has helped countless businesses in Kansas and around the country. His wife, Tammy, operates and owns a Yoga for Life studio here in town, and both of his kids have graduated from K-State and are gainfully employed, which creates such a lifted burden I didn't know until I experienced that myself. Since Mark's return to Manhattan, I've got to know him socially, and we let Scott hang out with us sometimes too, if it's not anything too strenuous. I observed Mark raising his kids, climbing mountains, running races, and managing a complex business organization. What I can tell you about Mark, he's always had a keen analytical insight to things. He never fails to demonstrate a tremendous capacity for caring, a strong moral code, and a great ability to reconcile hard analytics with the human side of problem solving. Both personally and professionally, Mark assertively and persuasively does the right things and expects the same from all those around him. To tell us a little more about what the Mid-America Manufacturing Technology MAMTC is up to, it's my honor to introduce Mark Chalfant.
I'm going to need a copy of that later. I didn't realize all those things could be said about one person. But I do appreciate the opportunity to stand here in front of you today to talk about my organization and more specifically manufacturing. Randy mentioned the MAMTC aspect. MAMTC stands for Mid-American Manufacturing Technology Center. And we're part of a national network. I want to talk about that a little bit, in the national network of helping and working with manufacturers across the nation. So today's presentation is some tables, some data, some stats, but a lot more about what we do to help manufacturers and why manufacturing is so important to our economy. So Randy mentioned my career started out at K-State, industrial engineering graduate. Like a lot of young people, the goal was move away from Kansas, move away from the state, go sow your own roots. And so I did that. I went out to California, spent some time at Northrop Corporation, defense contractor. Ended up moving to Utah, again, another defense contractor, but then the grandparents started calling, and there's no place like home and things like that. So in 1993, family moved back to Manhattan. So I've been with MAMTC off and on for the bulk of the time since '93, and most recently as the CEO leading the organization. We're a 10-person organization dedicated to helping manufacturers throughout the state, north to south, east and west. So the reason this is important and timely, in my opinion, is that October is Manufacturing Month. You may not know that, but it is, and most recently, October 7th was designated as Manufacturing Day specifically. So the date, the month, the timing of this is very appropriate, I thought. So a little bit more about manufacturing, a little bit more about our system. I mentioned that we're part of the national network. So out of the NIST organization at the federal level is this thing called the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, or NEP. So what exactly is an NEP? We are a national network of centers similar to MAMTC, again designed to help with growth, help with efficiencies, making manufacturers more profitable, more efficient, more effective, helping them with growth, hiring more people, selling more product overseas and domestically, those kinds of things. That's what our goal is to work with those manufacturers. Specifically, we're supposed to work with these small to medium-sized manufacturers. So what exactly does that mean? By the government's definition, small to medium-sized is 500 or less, 500 employees or less. So think about this national network of organizations, centers out there like MAMTC that are working with the small to medium-sized manufacturers across the nation, helping them with growth, helping them overcome challenges. That's what we try to do day in, day out with those manufacturing companies here in the state. So this program started back in the late 80s. It used to be called, or it still is called, the Hollings Manufacturing Extension Partnership. We kind of shortened it to MEP. But it was started in the late 80s because manufacturing was struggling at a national level. So they started this program, and MAMTC, Kansas, was one of the first 7 states selected to start this program. Since then, it's grown, and it's actually shrinking now. It had grown to about 61 centers, so some states had more than one center, and there's a lot of overlap, confusion, and those kinds of things. But now what we're going to is one center, one MAMTC-like entity per state, plus Puerto Rico. So we've got 51 different centers all across the United States and Puerto Rico designed to help those manufacturers with their growth, with their challenges, with their product design, with their quality systems, with their workforce training. Whatever challenges a manufacturer might need and face, that's what we're geared towards. So you can kind of see our logo there in the center all over Kansas. We are what we call a revenue generating not-for-profit. So we're a 501c3, but we do charge for our services. We do not have the subsidies. Other states treat it a little bit differently. Some states have their organizations run out of universities. Some are run by the Department of Commerce within a state. We operate with the Department of Commerce here within the state, but we are a not-for-profit organization. So you can kind of see everybody's a little bit different in terms of a logo, in terms of their names. We all have the same mission, but that's kind of established some branding problems for us, and we're working on those as a national effort. How do we define ourselves nationally? But again, I just wanted to establish a little bit of background about what our program is, why we started to exist, those kinds of things. So a little bit of facts about manufacturing across the nation. I'm hoping that you can all see these on one of the TV screens, but these infographics are kind of very easy to understand and promote, put out in emails, those kinds of things. So we use a lot of those to promote manufacturing and different areas, different topics, and so forth. So this one is a little bit dated. It's about a year old now. So it talks about the number of jobs across the nation that we have in manufacturing. The GDP of $2.1 trillion. $2.1 trillion of GDP in terms of GDP, manufactured goods. So actually that number is a little bit higher than that. It's, if you want to get technical, $2.17 trillion most recently. And the key thing to take away about that is that number is such a high number that it would represent, if the manufacturing sector of the United States were its own country, that would be the 9th largest GDP country. So $2.17 trillion is nothing to sneeze at. So to put that into perspective, well, I guess first of all, I wanted to talk about manufacturing creates other jobs. So anybody who's a manufacturer, like Randy's business, Holly Printing is defined as a manufacturer. Typically, traditionally, manufacturing has such a high multiplier effect in terms of job creation and wages and other employment or other monies spent in other sectors. That's why back in the late 80s, when manufacturing was struggling, they wanted to establish this program of supporting manufacturing, because it is such an important dynamic for the country. So you see some stats here that this program has had a lot of impact, and today the stats are 4 jobs for every manufacturing jobs are created by a manufacturing company, and $1.81 is generated in outside sectors. So this is the highest multiplier of any other sectors that you might have. So again, manufacturing is very important to the nation. But specifically, Kansas. What does this mean for Kansas? How does that impact Kansas? How does that all relate? So think about the $2.17 trillion, tremendous number. Here in Kansas, that same number, that same relative number, is $19.32 billion. We produce $19.33 billion of manufactured goods by our manufacturers within the state. So a little bit of statistics, a little bit of the table here. I'm hoping that you can actually read this on some of your screens. We did a proposal, a lot of research within the last, say, 3 to 4 months. And so this is some of the data that we had to generate and we analyzed and looked at to make sure that our program was actually meaningful to the manufacturers within the state of Kansas. So this table represents the various size of manufacturers. How many employees does each of those manufacturers have? And a couple of interesting things here is that you kind of see where the circle is, that basically 82% of all manufacturers within the state of Kansas are less than 50 employees. So thinking about the definition of small to medium size, 500 employees or less, this certainly qualifies. 82% of the manufacturers in the state are less than 50 employees. To put that in again into context, 90% of the manufacturers are less than 100 employees. So we in Kansas have a large number of small to medium-sized manufacturers that my organization and others like us within the state, we have a lot of partners that we work with, are all trying to help grow, nurture, help promote, help them out with different ideas, different products, expand their markets because of that multiplier effect. When the manufacturing sector does well, then the state does well, the nation does well. So within the state of Kansas, we've got about 3,100 manufacturers that employ 161,000 employees. 161,000 employees, 3,100 manufacturers. So a lot of the information that we get, we have to analyze to say, okay, where do they get their information? This particular table, this particular information comes from the Kansas Department of Labor, so we trust that number. But depending on the organization that produces a table, an infographic, or whatever, on manufacturing, they may show Kansas with less manufacturers, more manufacturers, because there is some questions as to what is the definition of a manufacturer. So it's easy to think about somebody who builds a circuit board, or somebody who builds a trailer, a horse trailer or something. That's a manufactured product. But what about a energy center that burns coal and turns it into energy? Is that considered a manufacturer? And I've had lots of arguments, and the answer is no. I don't know why, I can't understand it, but again, it's just an example of why you've got to take into context who it is that the organization, think of as manufacturers. So again, this comes from the Kansas Department of Labor. They're a partner of ours, they're a friend of ours, so we use their data. So I routinely talk about 3,100 manufacturers, east to west, north to south, all across the state of Kansas, hiring 161,000 or so employees in that arena. So it's a pretty good sized swath. So the other thing I wanted to point out here that's fairly important is we've got 15 companies in that 3,100 that hire a lot of people. They hire, if I can read, 43,000 employees. 15 companies that hire 43,000 plus employees. So thinking about your business, and the things that we try to work with manufacturers are, you can't have all your eggs in one basket. You can't have everything all together. If your largest customer is 75–80% of your business, you're at risk. So that's one of the things we talk to them about. But yet this data shows that when one of those 15 employers, manufacturers, has a problem, an issue, a layoff, they lose an order, what that does to our state. So that's why, in part, our organization and others across the state are working so hard to help the smaller manufacturers. so that we don't have such a reliance on those big companies. If you look at on the far right, I don't know how you can read this, but on the screens again, but those 15 employers have 1/3 of the wages in the manufacturing workforce. 15 companies control 1/3 of the wages for the manufacturing workforce. So that's a tremendous delta there that we might lose if there's a layoff or recession or anything else that we've got to try to recover, Band-Aid, organize ourselves to work with those other companies and bring in new companies as well. So again, I'm hoping that this is a very important table in my world, so I'm hoping that you can read it there. So we talked about the 161,000 manufacturers, and we celebrate the fact that we're number 3. Now, not too many times do you celebrate that you're number 3 in anything. You know, if you're an Olympian, 3 is better than 4, obviously. But I celebrate the fact that we're number 3 with respect to the fact of those states west of the Mississippi. We have the largest percentage of manufacturing employees of the whole, entire state's workforce. So if you read the verbiage off on the left, 11.5% is only trailing Iowa and Arkansas in terms of a percentage of the manufacturing workforce as a subset of the entire workforce. So we're 3rd largest west of the Mississippi in that. So you can tell where the demographics are. We've got a large number of manufacturing employees in the state that we need to work with, take care of, administer to, mentor, train, and there's still needs. That number is on the low side. There's lots of opportunities for young high school students to enter manufacturing. So again, thinking about manufacturing day as a career is certainly one of the goals here. A little bit more facts about Kansas and manufacturing. You see the map up here. I hope that it translates to the colors on the screen. I think it does. But one of the other aspects that we often look at relative to our data is rural manufacturers. So I talk about small and medium-sized manufacturers, but also rural. So again, the government has a definition of rural. If you're in the state of Maryland, you have no rural manufacturing. It's not necessarily the size of the company, it's the size of the community around the company. So here in the state, we have 105 counties, and all but 19 of those counties are defined as rural. So we've got a lot of rural manufacturers that we need to take care of and pay attention to. So the numbers in the counties are the number of manufacturers that we have defined. You see some counties don't have any manufacturers out there in the west. So they're primarily farm, ag, those kinds of things, and that's fine. But one of the interesting things that we did as part of this study this summer is analyze where the population is, but also where the manufacturers are. So I've drawn this north-south line, basically dividing the state into two. So there's 52 counties on one side of the line, 53 on the other side. But on the western half of the side, there's 15% of the population in the state, the general population west of that line, west of basically Salina, 15%. So that leaves 85% on the eastern side. And it should come as no surprise, but that's where the manufacturers are too. 15% of the manufacturing entities reside on the western half versus 85% on the right. So you see where our offices are. That's where the stars are on this map. And then the circles, we've got offices scattered all across the state. We've got partners scattered all across the state. But we focus on the eastern side because that's where the opportunities are. That's where most of the manufacturers are. So here in Riley County, we've got 30 manufacturers that are listed. And so you know, who they are, what they do, those are the kinds of things that we work with the economic development agencies, the chambers and so forth, identifying them, going out, meeting with them, talking to them, what are your challenges, how can we help you, what are your workforce needs, those kinds of things. So as part of the survey that we did this summer, we tried to survey and poll all of the manufacturers, those 3,100 manufacturers as we could, getting their input. What are your challenges to growth? So knowing that that table was going to be too small, what I did is I just broke it up into the top 5. The top 5 challenges identified by manufacturers. And so how to attract and retain qualified talent, lean manufacturing, incorporating emerging technologies, teaching basic workforce skills, how to manage business growth. Those were the top 5 challenges from the respondents that, for this survey, so that we can make sure that our program addresses those things that are challenging manufacturers within the state. So you see, 2 of those 5 are workforce driven. 2 of those top 5 are workforce driven. And so I mentioned several times that we have partners scattered throughout the state. A large number of those are community colleges and technical colleges that help deliver workforce training to the underemployed, the unemployed, the people who want to maybe not go necessarily to a university or a 4-year college. That we try to work with those entities that can help teach workforce value skills for the manufacturers in that region, in that area. But this is also a large part of why Manufacturing Day exists, is just opening the doors to a business, to a community college, to a technical college, so that the middle schools, the high schools, the guidance counselors, the underemployed, the unemployed can visit these campuses, these facilities, and learn what is manufacturing all about today. And that's the big misperception, misunderstanding, is what manufacturing is about today is not what most people think about. They think about their grandfather's foundry and the dirty floors and the soot coming out of the smokestacks and all that stuff. That is not manufacturing today. While those places probably still exist, it is a far cleaner environment. Even Randy's plant is cleaner than that. So, yeah. But Manufacturing Day again is a fairly new event. We just celebrated our 4th year. But again, it's an opportunity to recognize that we are lacking in terms of exposing the younger students, the middle schools, the high schools, students, to what manufacturing is all about today and why it's important. So that's what Manufacturing Day is all about across Kansas, across the U.S., is trying to promote an awareness of what manufacturing does and why it's a great opportunity for a career. Going back to that infographic several slides ago, there was a stat up there that the average manufacturing wage today is $65,000. So you think about it, if you're coming out of the vocational college or technical college, you're not probably going to get that amount. But after a couple of years, and some experience and things like that, $65,000 on average for a manufacturer worker across the nation. Here in Kansas, it's a little bit less. It's closer to $55,000. But still, that's a very good field. It's far better than several other sectors, and certainly flipping burgers is probably a place that some people go out of college or out of high school rather, but this is an alternative way, an alternative means. So again, we just celebrated Manufacturing Day last Friday, but again, it's October, it's Manufacturing Month. So I wanted to just kind of highlight a little bit. MFGday.com is the official website for Manufacturing Day. You can see the logo on the screens. Across the nation so far to date, we've had over 2,700 events. That number is growing a little bit. Most of them have already happened, but I do know that we've got at least a couple still in Kansas that are going to happen in the next week or two. Actually, there's one in November. So kind of outside the month of October, but that's okay. We had 32 events here in the state. Again, primarily technical colleges and community colleges, but there were a large number of manufacturing companies that actually opened up their doors to the citizens, the community, saying, come on in and see what we do day in, day out. Be part of this experience. understand us a little bit better, those kinds of things. And again, the focus is awareness. What is manufacturing today? What is it as a career? How can you help us be more profitable? How can you help us become a better manufacturing company and a better corporate citizen? So I mentioned one other activity that's actually happening in November. November 7th is a event, I guess is the right way to say it, and it's called How to Make Manufacturing Sexy Again. And the Wichita Chamber of Commerce and the Wichita Manufacturing Association have gone together to bring in the speaker, Karen Linder, out of Canada, to talk about how can we make manufacturing sexy. And actually, this is a program that was also done last week in the Kansas City area. Kansas City Manufacturing Network brought Karen in to have her give this same presentation, again to an audience of 80 to 100 manufacturers, community citizens, but also the middle school, high school, just to make awareness a key principle there. So this is one of those opportunities, if you're so inclined, to come to Wichita and listen to Karen talk about how to make manufacturing sexy. So a couple of takeaways as I summarize here. MAMTC, again, an acronym, Mid-American Manufacturing Technology Center. That's one of the things I always say. The middle M stands for manufacturing. So our goal is to have companies recognize that we are that manufacturing resource, that entity. Manufacturers need love too. So I thought I'd point that out in case anybody doubts that we need love too, or that there's a passion here. Over the next decade, 3.5 million manufacturing jobs will be needed. 2 million are expected to go unfilled because of the skills gap. Again, working with the community colleges, technical colleges to try to help fill that as best possible, but there's still a large number of manufacturing jobs that are going to go unfilled. So how are companies filling that or working around that? Some are doing it better than others. Some have challenges that others don't, those kinds of things. But you can see a large number of jobs over the next decade that are going to be needed. Manufacturing sector has the highest multiplier effect. Again, 4 jobs created for every manufacturing job, $1.81 for every manufacturing dollar spent. So again, a high manufacturing multiplier effect rather. And then one of the things that happened last night in the debate, and I don't know if anybody else perked up to it, but one of the things that one of the candidates said was about regulations and the number of regulations or the amount of regulations that do damage to the economy and those kinds of things. So I thought, well, what does that number look like for the manufacturing sector? So some quick research this morning. Manufacturers pay almost $20,000 per employee on average to comply with federal regulations. That number blew me away. I didn't think it was anywhere close to that. But anyway, I thought I'd throw that in as well. So questions. I'm giving the same presentation to the other Rotarian group tomorrow morning, and we have a new website that was built by one of the member Rotarians of that group. So I would be remiss if I didn't put in our website and ask you to go to our website, look at it, and those kinds of things. And one of the things that we're trying to do is just make ourselves better aware or better known in the communities and in the manufacturing sectors across the state.
You brought up the last night. Does your organization do public policy advocacy on the national level?
No, the question is, do we do any kind of advocacy? No, we leave that to the politicians and the political groups. I wouldn't say we work in ignorance of those groups. We talk to them, we help them, but our focus is really working with the manufacturers, not necessarily the legislators or the representatives. We like to have those conversations with them to show what the impacts of our program are having, but we don't try to do any of the advocacy aspects. Great question, though. Yes, sir.
Do you do anything with marketing and particularly with export development? And do you know how many manufacturers in Kansas do export?
Yes and yes. One of the things that we do is we recognize that every problem area, every challenge that a manufacturer or business or an organization has, we can't be that resourceful. We're very good in some things, lean manufacturing, getting rid of inefficiencies, making companies more efficient, quality systems, that's our bread and butter. Marketing is an aspect that we try to work with third-party resources. And so if a manufacturer or organization, a business has a problem and marketing is one of those, then we bring in the right resource and we just partner those two entities up. Regarding exports, yes, it's an important part of the state. We have twice a year, once in Wichita, once in Kansas City, a program that we call Export Tech, where we bring in companies, leaders from companies, CEOs, the operations managers, the leaders of those companies, and try to do a strategic plan focusing on exports. So we meet 3 times over the course of 3 months and say, okay, what countries are you interested in? Let's go do some due diligence, let's go do some research, let's go figure out who to contact. Then we work with a lot of different partners. There's an organization in Wichita, Kansas Global Trade Services. There's the USIAC out of Kansas City. There's another one out of Wichita. So we use a lot of different resources to help those companies that are trying to enter into the export world. If they're already exporting, they've pretty much got it figured out. Then we kind of try to shy away from those areas and focus on different challenges. But if it's a company that they might have gotten an order from Canada and they're trying to figure out how do I ship it, how do I get it there, how do I ensure that I'm going to get paid, or Canada's an easy one, but let's say it comes from some country in Europe or Asia, you want to fulfill that order, but how do you do it and not be at risk of doing something illegal? So those, what I call toe dippers, this is a perfect program for them, that Export Tech. So we do that a couple of different times. Again, Wichita, Kansas City, different parts of the year.
Thank you.
Back here. Oh, Clyde. Okay, let's go with Clyde.
What kind of progress do you think we're making on upgrading the skill level of this workforce to match this enormous demand for workers?
What kind of progress are we making? I call it flatline, and I say that in meaning that a company has a need for, say, 25 welders. We can find 25 welders. So their employment base fills that gap. But until there's another need or another demand for more welders or CNC operators or whatever the talent may be, then we try to pull in the right people or the right numbers, I guess. So that's why I'm saying it's kind of stagnant. So as welders leave and we need more, then we'll bring in the right number. I'd like to see it grow, and I'd like to see it be more available, quite honestly. So let's go here.
Can you name a couple areas where Kansas manufacturers have a competitive advantage?
Well, I think the location geography is certainly one. Being stationed here in the central part of the U.S. Certainly bodes well for transportation. We've got 35 that goes north and south. We've got 70 that goes east and west. But that being said, one of the junction of where those two interstates are, Salina, has a tremendous transportation hub. But even then, the transportation and distribution organizations that I've talked to said, we just can't hire enough CDL drivers. We've got plenty of trucks. We've got plenty of opportunities to ship stuff. We just don't have the right drivers. Nobody wants to drive the semis across the country to get there. So while I say geography is probably one of those aspects that's very advantage driven to us, there's still limitations.
Products, I guess, was the question. Is there a certain couple of products that we have competitive advantages in?
The largest sector that we have in terms of manufacturing, in terms of dollars, is in the food, beverage, tobacco areas. That's the largest sector. So obviously, being the wheat belt, the agriculture, we've got a large opportunity there. And so that industry, that sector drives a lot of ag equipment manufacturing. So think about the 35 corridor. You've got a large a number of manufacturers, ag manufacturers in Mound Ridge and McPherson and Heston and those organizations. And again, geography, proximity, but also some good engineers that come out of the universities that want to live in those locations to work in those companies. Yep.
Where does your organization get their funding?
Great question. We theoretically get it in three different ways. And it used to be, again, our organization is 25 years old. So 25 years ago, it was basically a third. A third would come from the federal government, a third would come from the state government, and the third would be project revenue generated. So we work with companies, we charge a fee for those. So again, going back, we're not for profit, but we are revenue generating not-for-profit. So a large number of companies and organizations that are quasi-government funded, they just get a bucket of money and go spend it. That's not our model. In today's economy across the state, that model has had to change. So we get money from the federal government still. We get no money from the state. We get support from the state in terms of some resources, some advice. They sit on our board of directors, those kinds of things. But we get no physical money, and then the projects fills the bill, the rest of the revenue stream. So federal dollars and project revenue from clients that we work with. So great question. So I hear the hook coming. The thing I wanted to just mention briefly, is Randy's grabbed them. I've got 3 books on this, How to Make Manufacturing Sexy, written by Karen. If you go to Wichita on November 7th and hear her, you'll get another copy of this. But I do have 3 copies if anybody's interested in those. First come, first serve type of thing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And for you speaking today, we'll donate a book in your name to the